Place to, if I can get to a place where I believe it, then that allows the allowing happens, and therefore you are able to let go of attachment to form and outcome. So what we're discussing here as we just come back from break, the breakout session and break is you're letting go of attachment to form and outcome is less of an act, and it's more of a result of the other stuff you did.
There's a question in the chat box, Lauren. Would doing steps to manifestation lead to feelings of guilt or help you cope or change your goals should you not manifest your initial goal?
Can the person come on with that? So I heard the first part is doing this.
Would doing the steps to manifestation lead to feelings of guilt?
Okay, hold that one for a second. That is step 6 here on the screen. If you have guilt, then there you've run into a block. So what are the blocks, or what could interfere with your manifestation? For example, a feeling of guilty. It could be because you are running a program of not deserving, not worthy, which brings up guilty. So that's something to explore within AC. Or it could be that you think other people have plans for you. And so the idea of you wanting this makes you feel guilty. So these are some of the reasons you would have the guilt. And so it is about getting curious because you have this desire and now I feel guilty, which would make sense why you haven't manifested your desire, because your subconscious, there's guilt. So there's something saying no to it, right? And so it's about getting curious. I can't tell you whether the guilt is a healthy warning sign protecting you from yourself, from your desire, or if it's just a program that's interfering with your desires. And that's where doing the notice, accept, choose again, and getting clear and regressing it back to see how old this is, to see where it comes from, and then check in with your goals. What was the second part of that question?
It's kind of a guilt or help you cope or change your goal should you not manifest your initial goal. The steps in leading to feeling guilt.
It's possible that from this question that are they thinking about the how-to or the actual goal?
I wonder if it's toward that. Is it lust? Is it an actual goal, or is it just something you're kind of lusting at? And at the moment, like Bankston had said, if it's on your list or you're manifesting it, and say after like a week, a month, a year, you don't want it anymore, was it an actual?
Yeah, we don't know, but your goals can change, and you may think you want something, because sometimes you think you want something and then you don't. You realize you don't want it. Sometimes what you're thinking you want is really what other people want for you. So this exercise gets you clear on who you are based on finding out what you really want right now. And so it is a real process. It looks very superficial when you look at the list here, and you realize it's another process to get you inside yourself and become very aware and clear on who you are and what you want in life. So the answer, I guess, would be yes. You may decide that this is not a goal you want, and then go somewhere else. And you're allowed to change your mind as often as you like. I like these kind of things. They're fun. Joe Dispenza says your thoughts matter because your thoughts become matter. Your thoughts matter. So I like the play on words there. That's the whole idea. Things start in the beginning in your programs, your thoughts, your thinking, and then it manifests here on a physical level, right? And so that's why your thoughts become matter, and that's why your thoughts matter. Very cute. Very cute, Dr. Joe Dispenza. So visualize this thing you want, see it, feel it, believe it. So come from it. Make your mental blueprint and then begin. That's by Robert Collier. And then, so we've been talking about the NAC approach, and just want to remind you about the choose again. And the choose again is the free will. Everything that happens is neutral. So you notice you have a moment to choose to respond versus habitual react. When you're unconscious, you're at the effect of it. And when you're conscious, you're fully resourced. And now you get to use your free will. Now you get to choose how you want to feel. And so this is that quantum physics of denying the existence of what's happening in reality, those senses, and go inside and create your blueprint. And so we talked about gratitude is a key part of that, just practicing gratitude daily and on a Newtonian level and on a quantum level. So Newtonian is minding the gap. What are you grateful for? What has gone well in your day in the last 24 hours? And then the quantum level is being grateful for your future as if you have it now. So I wanted to discuss in the Choose Again, we're going to go into the redo exercise. So we discussed gratitude. It's obvious about consciously eliciting emotions of abundance, love. So that's practicing. In the meditation that we included, that we did, and I think we've given you a recording, this is you just doing the breathing and then the body scan and then bringing light in and then sending light to somebody else, right? We did that. And first, before we sent the light, we brought in compassion, we brought in empathy, we brought in gratitude. I'm curious, was anybody surprised who they sent the light to in somebody in need? Often people are like, whoa, like they send them to their enemy almost. Like they're quite surprised who pops up in their mind when they did this, when they do this for the first time. So just wanted to share that this is something you just keep practicing. And if you ever feel you're all of a sudden, when you're in the zone, you just feel expansive, unlimited, you feel grateful, you feel love. When you have those moments, take it in, pause and breathe it in and remember it, okay? Oftentimes we have to remove the noise, the friction, and therefore we use the accepting tools. And then once we bring the noise down and we feel resourced, so we're in that alpha stage, then you consciously choose again. And so you can do the whole brain position. So we did this, we're not doing this again, but we did this as an accepting tool. I accept myself for the person who fears that there's not enough and I'm going to starve to death, right? Or I accept myself for the person who's thinks I'm going to starve to death. And then the choose again is I experience abundance. I trust in the universe, or it's easy and fun for me to make loads of money. And you just imagine what it'd be like if it was easy and fun for you to make loads of money. And you say that one. So just playful again. Psych-K, we're not going to do this weekend, but you can find a Psych-K practitioner, and that's a great choose again. It's one that Bruce Lipton likes, just another way to bypass the conscious, they suggest. EFT, so just like you can tap on the negative, you can go and then EFT the positive, and there's tons of YouTube videos, so if you Google this, you can find it. And then there's inner child work, so you can do inner child work on the choose again as well, right? So, and accepting what is, hey, what's going on? I'm feeling anxious. You listen, I get you feel anxious, so that's part of the accepting what is, letting yourself know that you get yourself, as if that child is inside you. Child is letting them know that you're there for them unconditionally, always, never leave their side. Let them feel safe. Let them know you got this. Now let's go into the redo exercise as this part of Choose Again. I just wanted to share that we've done this under accepting what is. And so you have these tools for the choose again, but we didn't talk about the redo exercise. Again, it's another one that's simple, powerful, and effective. So simple, you're like, really? I love this quote. It says, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Okay, so this is a great quote. I just want to, it's Maya's, I want to get her last name correct, give her credit here. Maya Angelou, it looks like. So I know a few people know her writing well. So do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Now I'm going to share with you a story with my own child of doing a redo exercise. And I look at this as like, it's just a mental rehearsal. And so there's two things here. We're going, when you think of this part of Choose Again, you're coming from the idea that you're putting something into the field. And so there's more to life than meets the eyes. There's more to life than our five senses. And somehow we're affecting each other based on our thoughts and feelings. And so we have this Wi-Fi. And this isn't just wishful, weird thinking. There's people doing experiments, as I mentioned earlier. A few of them have started sharing their stuff on my Conscious Talk series on laurenbrown.com. So it's not just like made up stuff. People are measuring this and showing that something is happening based on our thoughts. Our thoughts are information, a form of consciousness, and it travels at beyond the speed of light. It seems like instantaneous. And so it's a form of rehearsal. And why this is important is if you want to do a redo with somebody, or you want to be different in the world, if you can't do it in your mind, if you can't rehearse it, then there's a less of a chance you're going to do it in game time, in real life. So let me just explain what I mean now more by a redo and give you a real life example, and then we'll kind of reverse engineer, dissect it a bit. So when my son was in elementary school, he took a picture of his younger brother that was in tears, and with humor and laughter said he posted it on the internet. And my other son was crying, and my wife was yelling and told me, your son did this. And I was totally unconscious and lost it on my son, and yelled at him for posting a picture of his brother crying on the internet. And I could just see the fear in my son's eyes as I was frothing at the mouth, yelling at him. You could just see that I'm shaking his world. Because remember, I'm his best bet. I love him unconditionally, but obviously that's not happening right now. And even though I could see it, there was a part of me that was aware of it. I couldn't help myself. Even though I was so sad to see how upset he was, it just magnified my unconsciousness, and I just tore a piece off of him. And he's crying, and his little brother's crying. Now, I find out quickly that he actually didn't do that. He took a picture of his brother, but he doesn't even know how to put something on the internet at this age. So I don't know why I thought he did it, but that was his joke, to poke his little brother's button, like little brothers like to do. And so what he said he did, he didn't even do, but that's what he said, and I lost my mind. Anyways, I regrouped, because as you can find in this work, you will go unconscious, and then you'll have moments like, that's not the person I want to be. And you realize, I wish I could do this over again. Well, the beauty of this work is you can do it over again, because there's only the present moment. And remember, we talked about the inner child work, where you can take a CD and burn a new song on it, and then it plays a new song. Well, the redo is similar with this idea. And so I sat there, and first thing I said to myself is, that's not the father I want to be. And I worked my NAC on losing it on my son, right? So I accepted myself for the dad who feels guilty and upset that I lost my shit on my son. And I worked that for a little bit. And then I decided, how do I want to be? So I did my N, I did my A. So I'm calm now, right? Because now I'm present moment, and I'm accepting myself for the guy that just lost it on my son. And then how do I want to be? What kind of dad do I want to be? I want to be a conscious parent, a loving parent. And so I did a redo in my mind, and I thought about how I can handle it differently. And in my mind, I had a whole new experience with my son, and it felt really good the way I handled it in my mind. And that's the re-recording over it, where I'm sending the vibes out and letting him know I love him and all that stuff I did, right? And understanding and listening to him and getting clear and being conscious and not reacting. So I redid the scenario where I had a totally different outcome. Okay, it was very positive and beautiful. And that's all you need to do. Now, I'm going to tell you that I did call my son. So I'm going to tell you what I did, but I want to be very clear, and we're going to have to repeat this a couple of times. A redo is meant to be done in your mind. It's an energetic process. It's not meant to be done with the real person, especially adults. If you're a parent, you can definitely do this with your children, by the way, a real redo. But don't do it with your spouses and other people usually. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a good guiding principle, because you are going to come up against their ego, and you are not going to be ready for it. And you may come and do a redo, and you have it how you did in your mind, but it may not turn out that way in real life. And you may get them just freaking out on you. And you may not be able to stay conscious and hold the space while they go unconscious and regress. So I know when some of my friends have done like the landmark form, they tell you to go find somebody and tell them what they did to you or forgive them, whatever. I don't subscribe to that. Okay. Because it's you to ego. And this is a soul to soul thing, consciousness to consciousness thing. This is beyond and when I talk consciousness, I'm talking like on a cellular level, beyond the ego, beyond the personality that we've created for each other. This is on that level. And so if you go to do it with the real person, you're going to come up against their personality or their ego. And that's not what this is about. Okay. It's not, it's part of the field, part of conscious. We're doing this. And you probably won't work out in your best interest. Coming back to my child. So I feel pretty good. I did an NAC and I feel much better because I've now put out into the field how I wanted to handle it. And in my mind, that's how I handled it. And I really loved my son and was there for him. And I just felt differently. And then I realized he's young, he's a son, and he's in theta, and he's my son. So I have this special relationship with him. And so I can actually do a real redo with him. So they were in the car on the way to school with my wife, and I call up the car and hands-free. Hey, can everybody hear me? She goes, yep. You could just hear in her voice because remember, they just left and I was a madman yelling at my son. So they didn't know what to expect from me, even my wife, right? It was just that you could feel it in the car when I called the sense, yeah. I went ahead and asked Oliver, like, so tell me what happened again. And he says, Daddy, I didn't put a picture of him on the internet. And I said, you were just having fun with him, right? You love to play with your brother and tease him a bit. He goes, yeah. I go, you really love your brother. Yeah, I know you're a loving kid. You are such a good kid. Oliver, I don't want to be that kind of dad that yells. I want you to know how much I love you. I love you unconditionally. And I bet you wouldn't put a picture up of your brother on the internet. No, I wouldn't do that. You said we never put pictures of each other up on the internet. Yeah, you're a smart kid. I know you know that. And I really love you. Daddy, I really love you too. Do you know what's happening in Bob the Builder? Blah, blah. We just went into a whole new, it was over with. You just started talking about something else. So the redo is first on the inside. Now, I've done a redo with a relative that all of us in my family, there's an issue with. And I did a kind of redo with this person 4 or 5 years ago, and it shifted. Like I still have talked to this person. I didn't do the redo with them live. I did it like again on this conscious level. And my relationship with them has changed. It's kind of crazy. Nobody else has it, but I have a different relationship with the person. So the redo is a rehearsal though. And so oftentimes if you had it like, my landlord, I will do a redo, and sometimes I'm angry and I'm resentful and I want him to suffer and know he's wrong. So I know I'm coming from ego. I'm not being conscious. I have to clean it up, NAC, and then I do a redo with them. But I'm not actually having that conversation with them on the phone. I may have a conversation with him. However, how can I have a conscious being fully awake and present conversation in real time if I can't even do it in my mind? And so this is why the redo is so powerful on 2 levels. One is it's a form of rehearsal. If you don't practice the piano on a regular basis, when you get to Carnegie Hall, when you get to do your concert, how good is it going to be if you haven't rehearsed it, right, and practice it? And then the other part is the belief, this idea that consciousness goes beyond space and time, and that when you really put this out there and do a redo, there's an effect on a certain level where you affect people. Now, I've done a lot of this consciousness work in groups, and I've worked with people where on the Saturday we'll do something, we'll do like a type of clearing like you've seen some of you might have seen in the Course in Miracles. And then the next day, that person that they haven't spoken to in decades texts them out of nowhere, right? You probably had that experience yourself. Again, we're just re-engineering stuff. How can you make this happen more often? There's still that idea of not being attached to form and outcome. So if you're doing a redo so the person will love you and call you, now you're trying to be manipulative, right? And you're trying to change the behaviors of others. Remember, the theme of this is we can only heal our own minds. We can't change the behaviors of others. You're doing this just to send out good vibes, and you're not concerned about whether it gets received back to you, right? You're just changing the recording. So this is something that you get to do in life. So I'll give you an example. with my wife. We were in Florida together, and I got irritated and yelled at her about something. Actually, I didn't even yell. I just was very clear on my boundaries. She cried, and blamed me for her tears, and it upset me that she was crying. And so I had an NAC that I'm the husband that made my wife cry. Right, they triggered her tears. And again, in my mind, I was really clear that I was not yelling at her. Right? I was really clear, just setting my boundaries. She had her tears. I did my NAC on it, and then I did a redo in my mind, right? And with again, normally you don't. I'm giving you two examples where I did it in real life. Then I go and do it in real life. Now, again, you got to read the room and know the people and be ready for ego on you. So those that know Jocelyn know that she's a friendly, gentle, kind soul. So I knew I was pretty safe because she's not the type to lose her mind on you. She's just not her personality. Most people, as you know, who can do that, you don't want to do these things really with them in real time because you'll be at the effect of their ego. And it's okay because remember, the subconscious can't tell the difference between an in and out experience. There's no trickery here. I literally said to Jocelyn, look, I want to redo. She goes, what? I go, I want to redo. Okay, say this to me again. No, I'm not saying this to you again. Come on, please humor me. I want to just redo this again. I can do it differently. I want to do it differently. Fine. Blah, 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 blah. And then I redid it differently. And then all of a sudden we're having a conversation. And now we have a new now. Because at first she's like, come on. But she did it. And now I listened. And I became present. And so I redid it. I rehearsed it in my mind first. And then I redid it in real time. And it worked out well. I'm going to say the warning one more time. I don't recommend you do this with the person. Have I said that enough times? Now, you heard two cases where I did it, but I know my wife well, and she's not one to lose her mind and scream and yell and freak out. Okay? I don't recommend you do this with another person in normal circumstances. It's the exception to do this with somebody else because you're at risk of having a conversation with their ego, their personality. And this is about consciousness to consciousness. Okay, soul to soul. If there's any questions on the redo, let me know. But again, it's just a form of mental rehearsal. And the reason it works so well is you're doing mirror neurons are firing. So if you can imagine it and do it in your head, you're starting to change the experience because your subconscious can't tell the difference between a real and imaginary experience from reality, from imagination. And so you're releasing the chemicals again, the epigenetics, you're having a new experience because in your mind, that's the experience you're having. So that's your inner reality. And it has a physiological effect on your body by doing this. And then some say it changes, that goes out into the ether. You have a vibration to you and it's changing the ether, what you're putting out there. And therefore your external environment will shift or your perception to the external environment will shift. So if you can rehearse it, there's a greater chance you'll do this in real time. And there's fun studies on this where they take like basketball players and they have them shoot baskets, assess their skill level. And then they do three groups. One group just practices shooting baskets. One group just imagines. And one group does both. And the group that had the best improvement did both, practice and imagination. The group that practiced did better. And the group that imagined did better than the group that just practiced. So there's something to do with your imagination. Okay, so I just wanted to keep that up there as well. Dr. Vanessa Lapointe is a local psychologist here in Vancouver, BC. She's written a couple of books. I highly recommend, if you like this work on conscious parenting, her latest book is Parenting Right from the Start. And I believe she may be on laurenbrown.com. We've interviewed her before. I have plans for her to do some more. This is a book I often recommend to my patients that are pregnant or wanting to be pregnant if they're looking into conscious parenting. And she had trained with Gordon Neufeld. And so if you're aligned with that stuff, attachment parenting, and the stuff we're talking about, the inner child, then she's a fantastic resource for you. And I heard her say or write this out once, so I wanted to share it. The effort is never wasted. Because oftentimes we think nothing's happening. It is in you. It remains in you as a seed. Sometimes when the time is right, the rain falls, it will sprout. Often you're going to do this and you're going to think it's not working, it's not helping. And I kind of want to use this example, this idea that you see on the screen on the seeds and the sprouting of why persistence is key here. Oftentimes you're doing the work, you're doing the process work, you're using the NAC, you're doing the manifestation, and then you're looking for it in the environment and you don't think it's changing or you don't feel there's a shift and you think it's not working. And so you just think you're going to quit. I'm not going to do this anymore. But what's happening is that the analogy I have is it's like you've planted a seed. Now you spent all this time preparing the soil, cultivating the soil, adding compost to it, pulling out weeds and rocks, pulling out contamination. So even before you put the seed down, you've been preparing it. And then you plant the seed and you continue to water and pull out weeds and fertilize. But you come out and a week later, you look on the dirt and there's nothing there. And you think nothing is working. It's a waste of time. All that energy hasn't been helpful. But what you can't see under the dirt, because you can only see the surface, you can only see the external environment. What you can't see is this seed starts to decompose. And then against crazy odds, it sprouts with very little oxygen and no light and heaviness of the dirt. It starts to sprout upward, knowing where to go. But yet you come out again and look and say, this doesn't work, I'm done. You don't continue because you don't think it's happening. But if you just continue to do the work and the process work, all of a sudden it sprouts. And now you have a little sprout, but you still don't have fruits yet. You still can't harvest from this plant that you planted. But again, with continued watering, fertilizing, and pulling out the weeds, eventually you'll be able to harvest this. So I wanted to share with you that even when you think nothing's happening, something's happening. One of the modalities I like that we won't talk about today is breath work, like the real breathing, the Stan Goff type of stuff, where they used to use it with psychedelics to kind of get you to bypass the ego and get you into that creative aspect of yourself, to bypass the ego and help with healing and creativity. Well, they've learned that type of breathing, when they did the drugs, they'd also have this type of breathing so you can have this experience without the LSD, without the drugs. And so I've had many great experiences of releasing, like really pulling out vibration and gunk out of my body, cathartic cries and rage coming out through breath work. It's been very feeling therapeutic for myself. I've done multiple ones. There are times where I just breathe, and the ones I do are about 3 hours, and I feel nothing, as in I don't think anything happened. I keep doing it because I'm aware that, I'm looking at the soil. It may look like nothing's happening, but I realize something's happening, right? And so I have that trust now that I keep doing it. So it's not like every time I do something, I get to harvest fruits from my work. Sometimes I look and it doesn't appear that anything's happening, and I have that trust that something's happening. And hence I like Vanessa's quote, the effort is never wasted. It is in you. It remains in you as a seed. Sometime when the time is right and the rain falls, it does sprout. So this is my little quote. I have two on here. Where the mind goes, the chi follows. What you focus on becomes reality. And my other one I like is, the secret to abundance, to love and health, is to choose to feel whole instead of needing to fill your hole. Again, a little play on words, right? So I'd like us to have a lunch break, and I'm debating whether we do a little bit in the Lorianne, I was thinking maybe go to close to 12:30 our time and then do a meal break. I just want to go through a little bit of stuff. You okay with that? The group's okay with that?
Yeah, I think that's okay. We just had a break, so I'm sure everybody's okay for a half hour.
Yeah, I don't think I'll get through the disease section, but I thought I would start it anyhow.
Yeah.
So this is Yoda from Star Wars. And he's sensing a disturbance in the force. So this is dis-ease, right? We talk about dis-ease, and now we can understand it's that friction, right? There's that sense in you that something's not right. And the beauty of Chinese medicine is they've acknowledged that the emotions are probably the number one cause of disease. So we talk in Chinese medicine all the reasons why you can get sick, pathogens. They don't call them pathogens, but external evils, but pathogens and dietary and injury. However, they discuss how your emotions out of balance are the cause of most of our diseases. So that's over 2,000 years old. There's another expression in Chinese medicine that says before age 35, disease cheats you. Before age 35, you cheat disease. After age 35, disease cheats you. And so that's interesting because I share with you my patient population, and you probably experienced this. I have. It's kind of like after a certain age, all of a sudden you just can't, you have to deal with your stuff. It just seems like you can't put that beach ball underwater anymore. It just says you're going to have to deal with me. You've come to the age. And in Chinese medicines, acknowledge this in general, with a little wear and tear in the body. After age 35, disease begins to cheat you. So the relaxation response that we discussed to get yourself into alpha, to get yourself into parasympathetic, is the gift that you can give your body for healing. Because when you are under alarm and your body thinks it's under threat, the energy and the resources are being mobilized for survival, and therefore they're not available for creativity and healing. And so your immune system suffers long term. You get aches and pains, your sleep, your digestion, your reproduction. It creates a cascade of inflammation. And there's lots of talk about this accelerated biological aging as a result of chronic systemic inflammation. And so chronic systemic inflammation leads to accelerated biological aging and premature degenerative diseases. And this inflammation is a result of chronic stress because these stress hormones lead to inflammation in the body. It creates these inflammation markers to be released. And if you're looking for healing, we're looking at the autonomic nervous system. So a little overview of the spectrum of health when you think of it from a Chinese medicine model. And again, this is the model I come from. Naturopathic physicians think of this, even functional medicine doctors. And so on one spectrum, you have disease, and on the other spectrum, you have vitality. So health is a spectrum. And often in the West, we think of health as a form of absence of disease, the way our model is, right? Like if your labs come back normal and you're not at risk of dying, then you're okay. But if you're at risk of dying, you need to go to the hospital. It's kind of how our disease model is in our society, in Orthodox medicine. It's kind of an emergency medicine in general. I'm generalizing, of course. But health often is thought of as absence of disease, where in the Chinese medicine concept, health is considered vitality. And so when you go along this spectrum, you have disease, where you may need surgery, drugs, or hospitalization. Like the disease is physical. You can really see it. You can measure it. The labs show you have disease. And then as you go along the spectrum towards vitality, so you walk away from the disease part, so you have absence of what we would call disease, where your labs are normal, but you have symptoms. You may have infertility. You may have some headaches. You may feel fatigued or anxious once in a while. You may have the sniffles or runny nose, but your labs are normal. And so this is considered possibly healthy. Where in Chinese medicine, and what we're talking about is we're going to ignore the labs, as in just because your labs are normal doesn't mean you have health. Where are you on the spectrum? And our goal is to get you to vitality. And your body, your autonomic nervous system, has a big role in your health. And so you have this innate ability to heal and self-regulate. This is the autonomic nervous system. And so when you get cut, you don't sit here and go, heal, heal. You don't have to do anything like that. The body knows how to do this all on its own. Now, if you get a really good cut, you may need to get stitches, right? But the thread doesn't do the healing. What the thread does is it brings the tissue together. It creates an environment to support the body's innate ability to heal, and the body heals. It's not the thread. And so when you're regularly eliciting the relaxation response, that's you creating the environment for the body to heal. Why? If you constantly get into alpha brainwaves, if you constantly get into parasympathetic, the rest and digest, the breathe and feed, then all this energy that was mobilized for survival, which took away your resources from digestion and immunity and from healing to get ready to fight, And if you keep building up this energy with nowhere to go, it leads to inflammation. So it becomes part of the disease process. If you regularly elicit the relaxation process, then you're freeing up the energy and making it available for healing. And so it's not magical. Just by practicing and doing daily relaxation several times a day, the breath, the using the breath and then doing a body scan, that alone will do wonders for your body over time by increasing blood flow and circulation, by reducing inflammation. And again, just by pulling the weeds out, by reducing inflammation, your body gets to flourish because it's not being strangled by a weed, for example. So I just wanted to show the simplicity behind how can I use this to help my body heal a disease or keep my body healthy. It's a subconscious job here. It's autonomic nervous system. So your role is to set time aside to elicit the relaxation response. Your job is to choose to take vitamins and nutrients and to eat a balanced diet, to say no to certain activities, to find time to exercise, to find time to rest and meditate. That's the conscious choice you have. And then, just like when you eat something, your body knows to release gastric juices and what enzymes and how to absorb nutrients. Once you choose to find time to meditate and relax, you don't tell your body how to heal. It knows how to heal. What happens is it loses its ability to self-regulate. So if this is a pendulum, if you have an accident or you get sick, and the pendulum goes this way, the body has the ability to self-regulate that eventually it comes back to close to center, back and forth. But if your body loses the ability to self-regulate, then you stay way over here, and now you have disease, and you're not well. And so you want to create an environment for your body so it can regain its ability to self-regulate. This is the autonomic nervous system. This is creating the environment for your subconscious, your autonomic nervous system, which is contained in every cell, to do its job and take care of itself and do its healing. Powerful quote from Dr. Deepak Chopra. He says, it's okay to believe in the diagnosis, but you do not have to believe in the prognosis. That's a powerful statement. You don't have to deny the label you've been given, but you can choose how to heal and what you think your prognosis is. That's the difference here. So that was a powerful quote from Dr. Deepak Chopra. Dr. Ellen Langer, Harvard professor. Here's an interesting study she did that later wrote a book on it called Counterclockwise. And what she did is she took some elderly men in their late 70s to a retreat. They did this in the 70s. It was in the 1981 when they did it, and they took them to a retreat where they pretended it was 1959. And what they did is they all had to pretend it was 1959. So on the TV was Ed Sullivan, Nixon doing speeches. All the pictures on the walls had to be 1959. All the mirrors were covered so they couldn't see each other. And they had to talk and behave as if it was 1959, only talk about things from that year. They even started doing activities outside, like some form of flag football, etc. Now they do measurements, and they only did this for under a week. They did measurements for hearing, memory, vision, grip strength. They noticed that they looked younger, but in the study, all the gentlemen that were in this, they had a shift. Their hearing improved, their memory improved, their vision improved, their grip strength improved, and they looked younger. Why is this possible? Well, from what I've been sharing with you, the subconscious, part of your autonomic nervous system, can't tell the difference between an inner and outer experience. So they started living, remember all the manifestation, what we're doing here? We talked about EFT and how to have epigenetic changes. When you start to live as if that's where you are, they started reliving their youth again, and they started bringing back the memories. It reminds me of my patient with fibromyalgia where she started living what it was like to be healthy. The body's like, oh, this is who we are now. It can't tell the difference. So all of a sudden, those chemicals started being released again, those youthful chemicals, epigenetic changes. Langer goes on to say that this was evidence that the biomedical model of the day, that the mind and body are separate tracks, was wrong-headed. So she didn't like the idea that we're separating the mind from the body. The belief was that the only way to get sick is through the introduction of a pathogen, and the only way to get well is to get rid of it, she said. when we met her at her office in Cambridge in December, and then she came to think that what people needed to heal themselves was a psychological prime. She calls it a psychological prime, something that triggered the body to take curative measures all by itself. Gathering the older men together in New Hampshire for what she would later refer to as the counterclockwise study would be a way to test this premise. Something that triggered the body to take curative measures by itself. The body has an innate ability to self-regulate. Give it the environment. By changing your external environment, these men behave differently, right? So there's how they affected their internal environment. It's still an inner game, right? And so I want to share with you that you don't have to go and move somebody into a different physical environment. It can help, but if you can practice this in your head, you can see the epigenetic changes. How powerful is our subconscious and our beliefs and our programs? Well, in this research, they looked at people with multiple personality disorders. And what they started learning is that some of the personalities would need different reading glasses. Based on the personality, their vision was different. They go on to say that each personality may support its own style of dress, handwriting, speech pattern, sure, mannerism, walks, likes, dislikes, even eyeglass prescriptions, and responses to medications were different. The body's the same body, but the personality, who you are, based on what was present, their body responded differently. So much so that they responded different to medications. One alter personality may have a disease that the other did not. For example, diabetes and asthma. Their blood test was different. One personality was a diabetic and the other personality wasn't. It's amazing that this isn't talked more about. Is this not amazing that the body's the same, but epigenetically things are shifting based on which personality is in there, right? Another case here, distinct set of manners. They may have different allergies than the core person. So again, just sharing with you, I share this with you to let you know there's things that you can do to support your body. Now, I'll be clear and say, I'm not saying not to use conventional orthodox medicine. I am a person that believes in medicine, and there's different places and times for everything. I'm pretty grateful for medicine. I think we wouldn't have the population we had if we didn't have certain drugs and surgeries. People would have died. And so, again, too little is too little, too much is too much. There's probably certain things in orthodox medicine that is not helping people. And there's certain things that they are changing the world and saving lives. And there's certain things in what we call alternative or complementary medicine that are helping people, and certain things that are wasting people's time and money and could be better served conventionally. It's nice when there's integration. And so I'm not saying it's one over the other. I just want you to be aware of all of them. And where are you able to be involved in controlling your well-being? And one place where you are is your thoughts and your programs. And that's why we're talking about this. And there's nothing from what I shared with you yesterday that's stopping you from just doing daily practice to elicit relaxation responses. Here's a study just to show you more about putting things into the ether and impact machinery. So this is where they looked at young chicks. I guess young chicks very early on impress upon their mother. And so in a couple experiments, they do what's called random event generators, where these things will just statistically go in a random space around the room. They're just random event generator machines. And by introducing the chicks to this thing early in their life for a week, and then putting the chicks in one corner of a room and then putting this thing out, if the chicks were there, it would spend like 70% of its time where the chicks are, and if the chicks aren't there, it's just random again, showing that these chickens are actually influencing a computer and where it goes. So again, the idea behind this is, can we influence our material world, organic and inorganic? Because some people say we can, and here's a fun little experiment. What was their idea was, their hypothesis is that consciousness could alter the performance of these machines. And that's what they showed that they did. They showed that the machine spent 2.5 times longer on the half of the surface closer to the chicks compared to its motions when the cage was empty. I don't know. I just think that's pretty cool. I love the fact that people are doing this kind of research. So we're like, can my thoughts impact outside? Like, okay, they're telling me that my thoughts are like Wi-Fi and they go out there. I hear this. Okay, maybe, I don't know. And then somebody does an experiment like this. I'm like, okay, I want to be very clean with my thinking. If they're doing this, then obviously maybe what some people are saying that you attract, like attracts like, all this new age, new consciousness stuff that sounds nice. But when they start to do some experiments, I'm like, I like that. I'm like, it makes me want to be more diligent with my work and to be careful on what my Wi-Fi is putting out there. So think of meditation as your medication. We're using lots of drugs for pain, and we have an issue with our pain medicines right now. We're using lots of antidepressants. A lot of my patients are on antidepressants or some form of medication, whether it's natural or prescription, to help with their mood. And I'm inviting you to add meditation to it. And if you're not on anything, then definitely add meditation. If you are, just add a form of meditation. And I'm going to see if I can share a little thing from, yeah, I have it here. Good. This is from Mindful-Based Stress Reduction. So this is not the work we're doing, but just to show you the power of meditation. So I'm just going to bring this up. And it's a 3-minute video of just some of the research on meditation. So finding that time to be quiet. When you are able to elicit the relaxation response, there we go. Good. Okay. When you're able to elicit the relaxation response and through meditation, this type of meditation, so this is this type, because we do consider meditation general. What I'm sharing with you, I don't think is what's called meditation, although it could be a form of meditation. So I just want to be clear that there is a form of mindfulness meditation called MSBR, MBSR, and their research shows that you can better sleep, lessens your anxiety, improves your focus, boosts your creativity, strengthen your immune system, and basically lengthen telomeres as well, which are on the end of your DNA. That's important too for life expectancy and health. And so I want to share just some research on this. And then if somebody describe what am I sharing with you, I call this active imagination. And you'll start to see there's more research on, there's mindfulness and quieting your mind. There's a technique, there's active imagination. And I think doing all these things will benefit you. So let me just turn this on. And Lorianne, can you give me thumbs up if they're going to get sound with this or not?
Scientific research has always been the cornerstone of the work of the Stress Reduction Clinic and the Center for Mindfulness. It is through rigorous clinical and basic science research that MBSR and other mindfulness-based interventions have been shown to be effective and useful to people from all walks of life.
We would assess people before on various measures and then assess them afterwards. The research then went to a much higher level of randomized clinical trials to try to really discern in a much more stringent way what was going on with these people, say at the level of the biology, at the level of brain function, at the level of immune system.
We wouldn't be here 30 years later if it wasn't for the science, because you wouldn't have anything to talk about. You could just say, well, people think it's a good idea and they like it.
One of the first to test the potential efficacy of mindfulness meditation was conducted in a study on psoriasis patients at UMass. While all the patients in the study were treated with the standard ultraviolet phototherapy, those in the experimental group were instructed to listen to guided mindfulness meditation tapes while undergoing treatment.
The group that was randomized to stress reduction were more successful in seeing the decrease in the psoriasis than the group that was not.
To tell you the truth, I didn't believe it. It was too phenomenal a result. For people who are meditating between 30 seconds and 10 minutes, 3 times a week for 4 months. They're not allowed to take tapes home and practice with them at home like in MBSR or anything like that. So it seems like, wow, this is affecting a healing process.
Another one was a study that we collaborated with Dr. Richard Davidson and his colleagues at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and that was on a worksite study where we randomized a workforce into an experimental group who took the 8-week MBSR program and a control group who did not take it.
We actually did it with not the traditional MBSR clientele, but rather with a group of highly stressed employees at a high-tech corporation in Madison. The study demonstrated that MBSR, compared to a control condition, did indeed change brain function in specific ways over the course of 8 weeks.
We tested them with a flu vaccine and measured their antibody responses over the course of many weeks following the course.
And what we found is that the participants in the MBSR group showed a significant boost in their response to the vaccine compared to the control group. And the amount that their brain changed actually predicted how much the vaccine was effective. So this was really a landmark study in many ways, and really, I think, the beginning of the era of modern research on meditation.
Is that fascinating for you guys? Because I find that fascinating. It reminds me of, I don't know who said it, but they often mention that when a new idea comes about, at first it's dismissed. So people just laugh at it, give it no merit, just dismiss it. And then it gets radically ridiculed, where they'll stop, trample you to death, lock you out, right? You're threatened by it. You're threatened the idea. And then eventually it becomes accepted. I think of the scientists who were brave enough to say that actually the sun, the Earth rotates around the sun versus the sun around the Earth, or the Earth is round and flat. It was dismissed as nonsense at the beginning. Then it was violently opposed and ridiculed, and now it's a truth for us. I think we're kind of in that paradigm shift, and it's through science and measuring that it will get accepted. And we're starting to see, before it was like, oh yeah, you can meditate, it makes you feel good. And now people are like, we're seeing brain changes. Or when I started with EFT, it was like, yeah, it's cute, but come on. But now they're measuring cortisol levels. They can see the dampening of the amygdala. They can see hippocampus changes, and they can see epigenetic changes. Well, that's something happening on a cellular level. So it's not just, it's something that can make you feel good. Go ahead and try it. There's a physiological effect. And so that's what I remind you here is that the notice, accept, choose again approach is a way to free up these internal resources. Because if you're constantly in fear, in lack, feeling helpless, then you are bringing up the stress hormones. And like that vehicle, it's okay once in a while to have your RPMs up, especially if it's a survival benefit. Then it's necessary to survive. However, if you have no survival benefit and these stress hormones are circulating in your body daily for several hours, then they can wear out the body and lead to systemic inflammation, which leads to accelerated biological aging and premature degenerative diseases. And so just by doing a practice where you're relaxing on a regular basis, you get to free up your resources for healing and creativity. And then when you think about the vagus nerve system, this is part of the relaxation response. You can just see the benefit it has on the heart. It decreases heart rate and vascular tone, improves your insulin sensitivity and secretion, better motility in the gut and the juices, suppresses inflammation, keeps anxiety and depression at bay, poses the sympathetic response to stress, and decreases vascular tone, lowering blood pressure. So is there a benefit to relaxation on a physical level? Well, apparently it looks like it has a major benefit. And so it's interesting that we don't teach this in schools, and this is not the number one thing we're educating people about, because it's something that we can be doing regularly. And definitely for the practitioners who are on here and you're doing telehealth more, it's something that has incredible value to work with your patients and teach regularly, because look at the response that it can have on the body if they habituate this process on a daily basis.
Lauren, we just have a question. Do you know how quickly you can see changes in the epigenetics and the brain? Is it immediate?
Yes. It's immediate, and like anything, you can see more changes the more you do it from the research. So yes, I think in the one on the MBSR, they talked about just people doing 10 seconds to 15 minutes a day, they saw a change. So the change is always starting right away. And just think of it in practical terms of doing something like exercise. As soon as you're doing something, it's making a shift. But if you do one rep of the weight, you've started something, maybe some gentle tears, but maybe it's not even measurable because you only did one rep. Maybe you need to do heavier weights or 2 reps. So I'm not sure where the question is coming from, in that you're going to do this for the rest of your life. And so if you're asking this question, how much do I have to do? You just keep doing it, right? You just keep doing this every day. And like the Michael Jordan analogy I gave, if you feel like you're doing great, well, let's keep doing it so you can maintain it. And maybe you can do even great. Maybe you can feel even more abundant. Maybe you can feel even more joy. And so the people that stop the process are the ones that I've seen in the Gila group show up again and back into the hole, right? They suffer again. New story, same program. Fertility. So I love the idea of conscious parenting. It's somewhere where I'm going with the AccuBalance. And so my practice, most of the patients I see, they're getting acupuncture and laser if they're in person, and I'm encouraging them to do the belief change modalities. And so this is kind of the direction I'm going for any health issue, because again, I want them to bring in their own innate healing ability. And so I help give them tools for this. I still don't neglect the physical body. And so it's still bidirectional. And so I encourage my patients through dietary therapy and lifestyle therapy. And then I have more emphasis on my stress reduction tools, but I'm still feeding the body with diet, lifestyle. So rest, sleep, exercise, supplements, herbs, acupuncture, laser, and then they get tools that they get to use at home. And again, for those of you on here that want for telehealth purposes from distance, if you want some support, I'm happy to set up sessions with you where we do it over telehealth so you can have some facilitation, have me read your label on your jar. I'll share some interesting stories because I think I'm really in the infancy of this with fertility. But it's like fertility, that's just the story. That's just the picture of the external environment. So it doesn't really matter what you want to call this. But I was asked when we put this workshop together, some of my patients that I think are from the public that are on here did have some interest on fertility. And I'm going to make a more in-depth one with fertility, but I promise I would touch on it here to give them some tools and just connect it to the fertility side. And so I just want to share again this idea of believing and not looking for it on the outside. And this is well in advance before I was trained in hypnosis or before I was really appreciating the belief change modalities that I'm practicing now. And she came to my practice. She's 39, elevated FSH, low ovarian reserve was her diagnosis. FSH, if it's high from a fertility perspective, that's a poor prognosis. And her IVF clinic, the in vitro fertilization clinic, wanted her to do donor eggs. They didn't want her to use her own eggs. They didn't think she'd have a good response, and encouraged her to do a donor egg and not use her own eggs. She came to my clinic, and this is the observation I had and made note of it in her file, is she said to me that, and it reminds me of the Deepak Chopra's quote, she pointed down the road where the clinic would be, and she says, I don't believe in their diagnosis. And then as she pounds her chest, she says, I believe I'm going to have a baby, and you're going to help me have that baby. That's how she said it. What I noticed that was different from her from all the other fertility patients, the majority of them, is every patient I see wants the baby for the most part. They really want it. This woman, it was beyond the want. She knew she was having this baby. She believed. It wasn't like my patients say, I'm a young 40-year-old. I feel young. I'm taking good care of myself. I want this baby. She believed. She did not accept what the IVF clinic said to her. And she just looked for me to facilitate. Just read my label. What do I need to do? And so I worked with her and prepared her for her IVF. And she had her IVF, and we got some embryos, and they prepared to transfer one of these embryos back. This is pre-genetic testing, where it was called into test genetically. And the IVF doctor came to me because I would go on site and do acupuncture on transfer day, acupuncture and laser. And her IVF doctor came out to me and said, she really shouldn't have done this cycle. She should have done donor eggs. And it's your fault, she says to me, the doctor, that she did this because you encouraged her to do her own eggs. If it were me, says the doctor, and those were my embryos, what they look like, I would go into my car in the parking lot and leave. I wouldn't even get the transfer done. So that's what the IVF doctor, the reproductive endocrinologist, said to me. What was interesting, first of all, I never encouraged her to do either way. I was her sounding board, but whatever the story was for that doctor, she got pregnant, by the way. And in my mind, I was thinking, oh my God, what terrible vibes that she has for this patient. And God, I would never want that to be my doctor on transfer day, right? Can you imagine that kind of attitude? But I understand she had her patient's best interest. She really thought it wasn't for her. Anyway, she had a baby. That IVF turned into a nice baby girl. Fast forward about a year, just under a year, she wants to have another baby. So she comes back, says, I want to have another baby. She hadn't had her cycle back. So I said, normally we, treat 100 days. It'd be nice to have 3 healthy cycles. So we started, she got 1 period, and then she went right into the IVF. Okay. So we didn't really get much cycling done, and she did not respond to the medication, like 0 response. So when somebody does an IVF, they expect to see a whole bunch of follicles grow, and how they know they're responding is they measure a hormone called estradiol in blood tests. And if it's going up, there's this understanding that they're responding. There's follicles growing. Nothing was happening. And when they did an ultrasound, they noticed no follicles were growing, and her right ovary was shriveled up like a raisin, as her doctor described it. Different doctor, by the way. A different doctor when she did this. And I was surprised. So her cycle got canceled. Her doctor said, look, just be grateful that you had a baby. It was a miracle that you had your first baby. And she was very grateful she had that baby. And she came back 2 weeks later. I was surprised to see her on my schedule. She came back and she said, I realized I remember hearing you say you would like to see 3 cycles. And I only gave you 1 bleed, and then I went to the IVF. So I want you to work with me, and I want to have 3 cycles before I do another IVF. Now, I have to say, this is why they have to do. I wasn't optimistic it would work either at this stage, right? Because she didn't have, it didn't look good on paper for her, and she didn't respond well. But I was also aware that there's still a chance naturally, because people that have lower ovarian reserve, high FSH, we do see it sometimes happen naturally. So keep having intercourse. She's planning to do the IVF. She knows her odds. I'm happy to support her. And so we did the work. And again, I was very clear. She really believes she's going to have this kid. But like anything, sometimes your confidence gets shaken. And we were working with her. It was 3 to 4 months since that cycle was not successful. And it was probably would have been her 3rd bleed she was about to have, and the bleed didn't come. She came to her appointment, and she said, I'm going to throw it in the towel. I want to thank you very much. I feel so much better physically, mentally. I feel so healthy. But it looks like I've gone into menopause, because the doctors at my IVF didn't see any eggs, and my ovary was shriveled up. And looks like I've gone into menopause. Now, I've been around long enough to know that it's not like a switch normally. And so I said, well, there's a few reasons why you could not get your period. I want to be really sensitive about it, but would you be willing to do a pregnancy test? I was aware that she was having regular intercourse still, and she was pregnant naturally. And when they did the dating ultrasound, the corpus luteum, so the follicle that remained on the ovary, was on the shriveled up ovary, which wasn't so shriveled up anymore, the right ovary. So miracles can happen. So in general, there's the working on matter. So there's what we're doing with IVF, and this is approach that we're all familiar with. And then I think the paradigm shift is where miracles happen. I call them miracles because it's not something that we can easily, repeatedly do. It's not something we do all the time. There's still it's like winning the lotto. These people, for every winner, there's a huge lineup of people that don't win the lotto. However, like in the West, we often ignore the outliers. I like to look at the outliers, study the outliers, and how do we reverse engineer this? And she's just somebody that I was fascinated by because her belief, like she knew she was going to get pregnant. It was that idea that it was in her. Most of the fertility patients, and here's where we tie this in, is when we do the belief change and they're doing this stuff, They get excited around ovulation, and then they start to feel the period come, and the period comes, and then they are devastated, understandably so. And this is why I want them to have the tools, NAC. But they're not believing yet, right? Because if they were believing, they wouldn't have that kind of reaction. So it's just feedback. Now, of course, you're disappointed, right? It makes sense because you want this. But if you're actively looking, then you're still coming from lack. And so what I'm doing with my fertility patients is, what does the baby represent? It's never the money. It's never the relationship. It's never the baby. We start with, so you can do this with any condition, what does it represent? What meaning do you give to having a baby? So that's what I start with, is finding out the feeling. Remember, the external environment, I don't know how it's going to manifest, but I want to know what the baby means to you. What's it going to give you? Why do you want this? And that's what we focus on. And then we see what kind of blocks come up. So now we're not even focusing on the baby as much, what blocks are coming up, and we work that. And so some of my fun cases, interesting cases, what I'm noticing is I will push that uncomfortable button, but I'm here facilitating, so I'm not being cruel. However, because they're in my room, I'm with them, I know that I can do the exposure, I can bring up the fears, because I'm there ready to use my tools to help them transform those fears. So usually I ask, well, what happens if you don't, like, I'm afraid my IVF's going to fail. I'm afraid I'm not going to have a baby. Then what? Well, then my husband will leave me. And then what? And then what? And I just take them down the darkest hole to find out what is the biggest fear about not having a baby. And then we NAC that. So we're trying to pull out the weeds and the thorns, right? To open up space. And then there's the NAC, choose again. What does the baby bring to you? Why would you want a baby? And just like, what does money bring to you? Freedom, opportunity, safety. So what's the baby? And we work on it. There's never a wrong answer for that question, what the baby brings to you. So there's no judgment. There's only one answer that I will correct. If somebody says, I want something to love me, then that's not good. Because it's backwards. You're there as a parent to love your child unconditionally, but they're not going to love you unconditionally. You have parents. Your parents love you so much more than you love them, right? We're a parasite to them. They're there to serve our needs. So for those of you that have children, know how much you love your child, and you love your parents, but nothing like you love your child. And if the roles are reversed, if the child is there to keep the parent happy, love the parent, it's not fair to the child, first of all. It's just they're going to need a lot of work with us if that's the relationship. So I don't care what the reason is, but if they want something to love them, it's not that it's a wrong answer. It's just gives me something. That's where we're going to start to work, because that's never going to work if you need something to love you. I've only had one patient who wasn't happy in her relationship her whole life, and she wanted the child because she wanted something to love her. And that's too much pressure for an infant, for a child to bear. It's not fair. And you're never going to get it. That child's going to grow up and tell you to give me the fucking keys to the car, mom, you bitch. That's what that child will do, right? And so even if your child loves you and you love your child, that teenager is going to do that at least once in your lifetime. So I just that expectation can't be met. For all of you that have children, you know what I'm talking about. And for all of you that were once children, you know what I'm talking about, how we treated our parents. So let's just go by that. So going back to the fertility, and you can apply this to every condition, is what does it mean? Why do you want this baby? What does it bring to you? Some people want to nurture and love something, comes up a lot. I want something to love, of course, And if that's the case, that's why the inner child work. So all my fertility patients, I teach in the inner child work that do the energy psychology with me, is because remember I said that if you can get that vibration yourself, and then if you really get to that place where you believe it and you own it, so much so that when it actually manifests in this reality, you don't feel any different because you've already been vibrating, experiencing, feeling that on a daily basis. Well, why wait to have a baby to love something and to nurture and care for it? Start now with your inner child. So now you're starting to parent, you're practicing, rehearsing. You want to be this conscious parent. Well, if you don't practice now with your inner child, there's less chance that when you have your child, that you will be a conscious parent. You will revert back to how you were raised and all your unconscious programs. I know I'm a parent. It happens. You will get triggered and you will go unconscious. And all the things that you wouldn't do for your kid, do to your kid that your parents did, oh my God, you end up doing it, right? However, if you are rehearsing and practicing your inner child, so you're doing the love and nurturing for your little girl or your little guy, then there's a higher chance you'll do it when you have your little baby. And if that's the feeling you're looking for, who knows how it will show up? I know you think you want the baby. However, it may show up somewhere else. And if it does, and you have that, you're okay, because it's really, we think we want the baby. And yes, I know right now that's what you want. But if you can tap into the feeling, then who knows how the consciousness is going to work and show up in your life. And that's the part that I wish I could say, yeah, you get exactly what you look for in the material world when you try and manifest it in your eternal world. I don't know if that's always the case. It seems like sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but it always matches the feeling. That seems to be something that people are agreeing on. It matches the feeling. And at the end of the day, although when you're coming from lack and separate, you can't imagine what it would be like not having that child. So it's a difficult conversation. I don't usually get what we're sharing here to that level, because the shift doesn't happen. They can't even have that discussion and imagine not having a child. So it's not a good discussion to have early on anyhow. I'm thinking of another couple I worked with, dealing with the mother of the child. So she hadn't had children, and she had done an IVF and did genetic testing, and all 4 of her embryos that were able to be tested on day 5 when they grew them out in the lab, none were normal. And she was devastated. She came to me quite devastated, upset, tears. And she was on a mission to figure this out. She didn't believe she could have a child yet, but she was going to do everything she could. So she was pretty close to that first patient I had. And she was ready to go to Germany to do this experimental egg testing technique that's not widely spread or accepted yet, not a lot of good data on it. She was ready to do a lot of things. And we did diet and lifestyle, supplements and herbs, IV therapy. We took care of her body. She got acupuncture and laser regular. We did stuff with her husband as well. Takes 2 to make a baby. And we went to work on her mind because she was really suffering with infertility. This was affecting her life. She's a health provider as well. And so we worked it. And she started making shifts. Her body changed, like dietary changes she made. She started eating, even she didn't even have to eat well, and her body started getting thinner and thinner. It was amazing because she did a lot of work on her mind. She really started doing this conscious work and reporting to me like some of the things she was doing. I was like, this is awesome. And she just embraced it. And she shared one day how much she wants this baby. And she really hopes she has a baby, and she's going to do everything she can. She's given herself so much time to have a baby naturally. And if not, by this date, they'll do an IVF. So she gave us time over 6 months to work with her to get her to a place to see if she can conceive naturally. And if not, go into the IVF again. But she said something that I was like, okay, this is awesome. She goes, if I don't have this baby, I'll be disappointed, but I know I'll be okay. So there's the shift. Now I'll share with you that she never did the IVF. She had the baby naturally. She got pregnant naturally, this woman. Again, though, she was already, and that's my goal, to get 100% success. It's not about them getting pregnant or having a baby. It's about they're going to be okay mentally, physically, whether they have the baby or not. Yes, they're not in denial. She's not saying, I don't care if I don't have the baby. That'd be a lie. She wants the baby. Your ego is still there. You still have your desires. She knew she'd be disappointed. She also knew she's okay. She'll be okay. Because she's no longer looking for the baby. That's not going to fill her up, but it's something she wanted and she would enjoy. And she was learning to fill herself up internally through all the work we did, the NAC, the inner child work. She was filling herself up. So she filled her holes, F-I-L-L-H-O-L-E. She filled her holes so she could feel F-E-E-L, whole, H-O-L-E. And so that's what I wanted to share, just a small piece on the fertility. And then my secret agenda. I always have a little secret agenda. I want to heal my mind, so we help heal the planet. And I want everybody to heal their minds, so they'll heal the planet, right? The more of us, the better. I want all my patients to become conscious parents, because then the next generation, it takes one generation to say to heal the world's problems. So as my son tells me, I ruined the world for him, my generation. He's quite upset what we've done. and it's up to his generation to change the world, apparently. And so if everybody had conscious parenting, Gila Golub says this, if everybody had the attachment parenting, developmental parenting versus behavior, she believes we wouldn't have the suicides, the opioid crisis, the cutting that we're seeing in the younger generation if they all just got this type of attachment parenting, is her belief. And so my role here at AccuBalance is through fertility treatments is whether they have babies or not, to teach them to be conscious and become conscious parenting. And then we'll have a generation of children that were raised this way. And the theory is that the world will be better. So we'll see. I won't be around to see it, but physically, maybe another part of me will. So it has to be on a cellular level. So wanting is not enough. You must believe. And so with my fertility patients, it's a tough one, this fertility one for the women I see. But if you keep looking for it, that's feedback that you don't believe yet. Remember the first patient I shared, she knew it was going to happen. She just said, tell me what I need to do, and it's going to happen. So she wanted it, and she believed she was going to have it, and just tell me. She wasn't like, oh, where's it going to be, right? So wanting's not enough, because every single patient that I have wants it more than enough, wants it well more than enough, and does the procedures, the natural, everything they do. They go beyond like anything else for any other condition, besides maybe a life-threatening disease. They do more than anything you can imagine to have this baby. So you cannot question their wanting, their desire. It's the strongest desire I've seen in any demographic I've treated with. But do they believe? And it's difficult to believe because the medical system keeps telling you have something wrong with you. And so the external environment keeps telling you there's something not right. And so your confidence, you fall into that gap. And so our role, my role, is to help them get out of the gap. And that doesn't mean because they do this, they'll have a baby. However, because they do this, they'll be okay whether they have baby or not. And so the key for your health condition as well is to feel whole. That was the key, to be okay with, accept yourself as a person that has a knee pain and you're okay with it. And then playing with it though, like what it would be like if I didn't have knee pain. And so if you're getting rid of knee pain, you're not thinking, oh, I don't have knee pain, because the subconscious can't compute that. What would you be doing if you didn't have knee pain? So you'd be playing tennis. So that's the image you have, is playing tennis. Because if you're playing tennis in your mind because you love tennis, what does the subconscious have to do? Fix your knee. So you follow. It's not like you're getting Pac-Man eating the cancer in your body. I know people do that kind of imagery, Pac-Man. I think it works. It's one of those tools you can do. I'm suggesting is if you were cancer-free, what would be different, right? That's what you're focusing on, the end result, okay? Otherwise, you're coming from lack of or separate from versus connected to the end result. So believe as if you already have it. If you're seeking it, then the vibration is of not, and the very seeking introduces resistance to it. And again, it's a happy medium. So of course you don't believe now. That's why you're seeking it. So you practice the seeking and working it, and then keep checking in. Is it inside yet? So you want to be grateful in advance, that inside job of seeing it in the external environment. So pretending you see it. And so gratitude is a form of receiving. So that's the quantum level of practicing gratitude. So your intentions are clear, but what are you feeling? And if it comes from lack, not having it, then you're creating resistance. Again, deep breath, see it, and then keep practicing. It's just feedback that you need more practice.
Lauren, there's a question here. It says, do you have them visualize having a baby and holding it and what life would look like with the child?
Yes, definitely. That's one of many things you can be doing. So yes, when patients say, I just want to get to the transfer, I'm just so excited to have the transfer. And I go, why would you want that? What do you mean, why do I want that? I want to have a baby. I go, well, why would you want to focus on the transfer? What happens if you get to the transfer and it's negative? Is that good then? Did we get what you wanted? No. I go, exactly. What do you want? I want to be pregnant. Really? You're going to be pregnant for how long? 30 years, 40 years? You want to be pregnant that long? No, I want to focus on what you want. What do you want? I want to hold a baby. I want to nurse my baby. Go to the end. So rather than focusing on the how-to, with the woman that got pregnant naturally, she was preparing for IVF. I didn't know whether it was going to be IVF, whether it was going to be natural, whether it was going to be donor egg, whether it was going to be adoption. right? Or whether something happens in another city and somebody comes to her and says, will you take care of these babies? They have no parents. I don't know how the universe is going to give her a baby. Just focus on having the baby. That's what you want. You want to nurture. You want to be a mother. You want to love something. Well, practice that and your own inner child. My women that have done this that have, I have a woman that did this with donor eggs. So every donor egg cycle, she had several, did not work. So we did the mind body stuff going into her donor egg cycle. It's worked. Actually, I got to check because she should be having a baby any day now if she hasn't already. But one of the coolest things is while she's pregnant is she was nurturing her inner child and her baby at the same time. And so she realized as you're working with your inner child, the baby's bathed in that and it's experiencing that. So she had conversations with her inner child, and then she talked to her baby, her fetus, and back and forth, back and forth. So she was mothering twins, although she's carrying one. It felt like she was raising twins in utero. Loved it. And I saw her at 33 weeks, and she's just like glowing. Everything's awesome, right? So again, it's about conscious parenting and healing the mind.
So we just had a couple follow-ups to that, actually just kind of two along the same lines. So I'm just going to read them both because they kind of fall in together. How do you support them if it doesn't work? And then just a little more detail, but how do you also prepare them if they don't get pregnant or have a baby?
Yeah, you hold the space for them, right? I got a tougher one. I have a patient that lost her 11-year-old son to cancer that I went a couple of times to the hospital and did some Sani acupuncture for him, and I did the Bankston healing. He had aggressive cancer, which is what Bankston healing is great for. It didn't work for him, as in he did not live. I hold the space, right? Hold the space. And so I breathe, I'm centered, I work on myself, I'm clear, and I just have compassion and empathy for the person, right? And I listen. And I don't try to make them feel better. Oh, don't cry and all that. I hold the space. They want to cry, they cry, and I listen, right? And then if a program comes up, I'll work the program. So if they're listening and they come up with stuff, because of my experience, I've been doing this for a few years, and again, training in many modalities around belief change. So if the opportunity arises, I take a judgment, I take what could sound like a program, and I question it with some curiosity. With my fertility patients, yeah, I hold the space. And so when it doesn't work, there's your NAC. So how are you feeling right now, right? My body's failing me. I feel like a failure. And so now we got our noticing. So now we go into accepting what is. You can whole brain it, EFT it. So do you want to work? Let's work it, right? So how strong is that feeling of failure that the body's failed you, right? And then how old is that after you work it? Just like when? So again, if you're playing with the manifestation and this new science of consciousness, is there a connection to history, right? And so, what happens if you don't have the baby? What does it mean? So when they're raw, with love and compassion, and they get the sense of it, right? And I'm not taking it personally if they get upset with the question, right? And so you ask the questions and we work it. So when you're in pain and suffering, it's now vulnerable. Now I don't have to really get you to try and think about a memory and think about the feeling. Like you're in it. So now it's like, great, it's so vulnerable. So when somebody's losing it in my office, to me, I'm like, awesome. And not in a very narcissistic, disgusting. I mean, like, awesome. Like, you're going to do some healing, right? Like this, it's right there. It's raw. It's in front of us. We get to work it right now. And my patients know they have to work it. Only once in a while, if they say like, I'm tired, I don't want to do it today. Once in a while they get like a pass, but they know you have to work it. And I share with them, that's the ego's game. Ego's game is I'm tired. I just want to relax today. Can we just relax today? Can we not do any work? Can you just put the needles in and let me relax? Yeah, we could do that, but that's not why you're coming here. Nice try. Can we work it? And sometimes I can really tell, like sometimes they just need to rest. You don't get 3 of those in a row with me, right? You don't get 3 of those in a row. No, you get 1 for sure, maybe 2, but usually just 1. And then we come back to work. It's work. So just so you know, I see patients, but a lot of them will come for a bit, but then they don't come. Why? Because they have to work. Like you're working in my sessions. They're working. So it's not like I get to chill. I'm with you and I'm working you and I'm facilitating. So it's a lot. It's work. And so people sometimes opt out. You have to want to heal. You have to really want it to work with me. And those are the people I attract. And those that don't come back, if the pain gets bad enough, they usually come back. right? Suffering gets bad enough. If not, that's okay too.
Okay.
Any more questions, Luann?
Yep, there's a couple more here. So next one is, did you ever have anyone realize that they actually didn't want a baby,
Yes.
even though their original intention was coming to see you to have a baby?
Yes, I've had a couple that are having a baby for their husband. He wants a baby, or her in-laws wants a baby. They don't want a baby. So yes, they have realized. By the way, they still go for the baby, but they've admitted to themselves they don't want the baby. So it's a starting point. It's conscious. It's out there. They said it to somebody else, so it's out there. It's not a secret anymore. And they will find a way to work it. But yes, they realize that they don't want a child. Why are they having a child? It could be because society says you have a uterus, XX chromosome, so you should have a baby. It could be that you have in-laws. It could be that you have a mother that wants a baby, or your husband, etc. So there's many reasons, and there are some women that do not want a baby.
It's kind of a comment. My concern with projection of having given false hope, I think that's having the patient visualize the end result of the baby, or having the actual baby, and the potential legal ramifications. It's a tricky thing. Maybe she's agreeing with you.
Yeah, I don't know about any legal ramifications about that. Possible. I'm not concerned about that. It's ecological check with the patient. They want to have a baby, and the ecological check is whether you do IVF or see me, you're either going to have a baby or not have a baby. So I feel pretty good that that's that's understood. Me nor do the fertility clinics say that you will have a baby. And the IVF clinics will get you inject yourself with hormones and surgically remove your eggs, inseminate them, and surgically put them back in and give you more drugs to have a baby. And I'm telling you to imagine yourself having a baby. So 2 different methods of how to get you the baby. And no woman in her right mind would go and do an IVF and spend that money and do those injections if in her imagination she didn't think that she may get a baby from this. So she's definitely thinking about having a baby. And from how I work with consciousness work, if you're afraid to imagine having it, then again, it's there's a blockage there. So, and that's how I explain how I work. We're just looking for kind of blockages. And as a parent, if the fear of thinking about having a baby and then not having it is going to cause the patient great fear and concern, then I have concern for her having a child, because as a parent, I'm always worried. I often worry about my child dying or not coming home from a party or from something. And so that worry will never go away. And as a practitioner, that's my vibration to clean up if I'm worried about legal ramifications. I'm putting that out in the field. So I got fear. I'm going to do it wrong, and then I'm going to get in trouble, and then I'll die. So the practitioner who ever put that out there, I would NAC that one as well, because that's everything's neutral and you're giving meaning. So there's a possibility, like that's where you get curious. When those thoughts come up, where did that thought come from? And then get curious with it and ask those questions, right? And so what happens if a patient does this and then they don't get a baby? And then they blame me that I damaged them because they thought about having a baby, and now they're emotionally messed up because they didn't get the baby. And then I get sued. And then what happens if the lawsuit wins and I'm sued, all this money, and my name goes in the paper and I'm ridiculed and I'm told I'm a posture fraud, heretic and nutbar. And then what happens? And then nobody will like me. And then what happens? And then what happens? So just keep tracing it back. NAC it. Any comments on that comment?
No.
So we're going to break in a second, but since I only have 2 slides left, and then we go into relationships, the healing appears to come from the autonomic nervous system. So that's the key here. So you're wanting to do things to support your autonomic nervous system, the subconscious, your supercomputer. And so just a reminder, with the Bankston healing technique, what he was sharing in his research is you want to get out of your own way, meaning you set the intention And then it's the subconscious that's going to do that. So make space for the subconscious. It likes sleep, eat well, rest, exercise, laugh, and practice eliciting the relaxation response. Take media fast where you're not watching the news. These are the things that if you're engaging the relaxation response, keeping yourself more in the parasympathetic alpha to theta, it seems like that's the thread, the stitches, that allows the body to find its ability to self-regulate and do its own healing. It frees up resources. So it's less of what you consciously you're trying to do and more about giving it the environment and then sitting back and letting it do what it needs to do. And you're really linking up subconscious to subconscious based on the work of what Bill Bankson says. Lynn McTaggart wrote a book, several books. Her latest was The Power of Eight, Harnessing the Miraculous Energies of a Small Group to Heal Others, Your Life, and the World. She's on Conscious Talks on the LaurenBrown.com website. And so you can check her interview out. She talks about fertility as well and her Power of Eight. And so, again, her work's about intention heals. And there's a rebound effect. So she gets you into groups of 8. She gets you, the meditation, we breathed and we brought in love into her heart and then we sent the intention out. So she gets you to get yourself into that state of compassion, love, passion. Find out the person in the group, what's going on with them, what they want, so as if they have it now. And then you send out the intention that this person's hip is free of pain and has lots of mobility and they're jumping on a trampoline because that's what they wanted you to imagine, and that they're healthy and well in every way. This is like a quick idea of what she does. And then you just spend a few minutes listening to music, holding hands, and you're intending for this person. And the person is there to receive. Their job is to receive. And in her research, she shows that there's a rebound effect, that the people that are intending benefit equally or even more so. So there's an incredible rebound effect when you send healing to somebody else. And I've done a few circles, Power of 8 circles. I did a Lynn's workshop, and then I've done it in groups when I've done groups here in Vancouver. But just seeing some of the people, some of the experience they have is pretty wild. Just the people that are intending, the emotions that come up, the heat, the incredible heat that's come through some people is pretty wild. So just wanted to share about the healing part. Simple, powerful, and effective. What I need to heal, really elicit the relaxation response on a regular basis. When you feel the friction, go in and use your notice, accept, choose again tools. Just get present. So present moment is really healthy for you. It takes away that inflammation from the stress response. And then you can do your manifestation technique to see yourself skiing or playing tennis because your knee's better. So you can use all the stuff we have to support your body's healing while you do whatever else you do, whether it's acupuncture, chiropractic, drug surgery, whatever you do, you're just adding another component to support your body's innate healing ability. So let's do a 5-minute breakout session and then go to lunch. Okay. Any questions, Lorianne, before we do the breakout?
Nope.
Okay. So I just want you to discuss how the body has an innate ability to heal. Okay. So just share that for 5 minutes and then we'll do lunch. And so let's come back at 1:40 Pacific Standard Time.